يا الله اوكي تمام. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد. الله صل على محمد وآل. ثانية على حب الزهراء. ثالثة على حب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله يا ابن رسول الله وابن أمير المؤمنين وابن فاطمة الزهراء سيدتنا وسيدة نساء العالمين. غريب يا مظلوم كربلاء. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته, brothers and sisters. Yesterday we talked about women rights in Islam, and there were several points that were mentioned, and there are several others to be mentioned today. But I want to go back to the time of Islam and talk about some practices that used to be done towards ladies, women, that basically were so barbaric that they are at this day and age something that cannot be imagined. One of them I actually mentioned before, which is that they used to kill their newborn children if they were female, because they thought that males are far more superior, they're far more useful, and there is no danger when they have a male child that they associate with having women, because they say, oh, you'll have to keep her chastity, you'll have to follow up to her, you'll have to keep her away from the men and whatever. So that is one thing that given to women in case someone of her relatives died. So basically, she would not inherit anything. If her father dies, husband, son, whoever, there was no inheritance. Islam came and said that women have to inherit. But yet again, there is another question. Why do women in many cases get half of the amount that men get when there is some certain death that is to come, and then it occurs, and then there is some money left over for that person that has passed away, and they want to give it away to his relative? Why do we give ladies, in many cases, half of that we give to men? The answer is similar to an answer I have mentioned yesterday. Islam follows justice, not equality. In many cases, justice and equality do not meet. So Islam stays always in the realm of justice, and sometimes in equality if it corresponds to justice. So in the family hierarchy that Islam likes to keep and establish, the patriarch, the father of the family, is the one that is responsible for his children and for his wife. The Islamic legislation states clearly that the husband has to pay for all of the expenses, whether they be health related, whether it is related to education, whatever, all the necessities that children and also the wife needs, the man has to provide for. Even though if the wife is wealthier than the husband, even if the wife is a billionaire, a multi-billionaire, and the husband is poor, he is by Islamic legislation forced and obliged to provide for her all her necessities and needs. So in another perspective, when we come to the cases in which there is a death and then there is some sort of compensation that is given to the inheritors, then women in many cases get half of what men get. What are the chances that someone dies and you inherit him? They are very low. They are increasingly low, because now the healthcare is better, everything is geared towards making human life of better quality and of better actually in all aspects, including health. So let's say once, twice, thrice in a lifetime will someone inherit, but the husband day in and day out, year in and year out, is obliged to provide for his family and his wife. So basically, having double the amount when there is an inheritance, and in case it's a man, he has double the amount, that is something that is nothing when you compare it to establishing a full livelihood for his wife and for his children alike. So this is one thing that I wanted to talk about. Also, I want to return to a point that I mentioned yesterday. Yesterday, I said that in case, God forbid, someone kills a man, he would have to pay an amount of blood money. But if he killed a woman, he would have to pay half of that. And I said yesterday that the Islamic answer to that is that the males are more likely to be killed because they are the ones that go to war, they are the ones that go outside the house, they go to work. And even though these days increasingly women are sharing the man in his responsibility, but the original mission that Islam gave to the man is keeping his household. So he would have to do all the things that are actually dangerous and all the things that he has in order to defend his household and his family. So basically, this is just an issue of insurance. Islam wants to keep lives and wants to prevent them from being deteriorated. So he puts blood money and puts increasing amounts of blood money for those who are in high chance of getting killed, murdered, whatever. So I wanted to mention an extra point here. If we look at the insurance system that is established by the leading countries in this world, you'd see that they would require that the person who is in a higher chance of getting an incident, he would actually receive less compensation and would have to pay more installments. And if someone is in less danger, then he would pay, a lesser amount. That is no problem. And he will actually receive a higher compensation. In Islam, it is the opposite. The higher the chance of the incident, the higher the blood money that you would have to pay, so that it would be a deterrent. Here in all of the countries, the insurance system, if you are in high danger, you would have to pay more and you will get rewarded less, because they care not about the human life and value, they care about the money. Islam does not care about money. It cares about the quality of human life and keeping humans alive. In Islam, when the Prophet came, peace be upon him, women did not have many responsibilities. They had no inheritance and they had little to no rights. Islam came and introduced many things and many new ideologies that were unprecedented within Arabs. I'll give you an example. قال الرسول صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم المرأة ريحانة وليست بقهرمانة. This is a narration by the Prophet, peace be upon him, that says that women are flowers, not ambers. It is a metaphor. Both flowers and amber stones have a nice smell, but flowers have that smell 24/7. You don't have to do anything to that flower to attain that smell. All you have to do is give it a little bit of water. That's it. But ambers, these stones, you'd have to actually induce heat into them. You'd have to rub them together or rub them by your hand and treat them violently until they produce a nice scent. So what the Prophet, peace be upon him, was saying is that women are delicate. Treat them delicately. If you only provide to them the love and affection that they need, then they will give you everything that they have. They will give you compassion, they will give you companionship, they will give you, all the things that would make your life beautiful as a man. Whether you are a brother, a son, a husband, a father, a grandfather, any lady within your household will be like a mother to you. What did they used to call Fatima, peace be upon her. They used to call her Ummu Abiha, the mother of her father, because she was so affectionate. When the Prophet, peace be upon him, first declared Islam, people did not accept him at all. And they used to wait for him to pray and come and dump trash on him, on his face, on his beard, on his back. He did not retaliate. He wanted peace. He did not want war. And Fatima, peace be upon her, the daughter of Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his family, used to come to him and remove the trash that was dumped on his back and in his beard while she was just, very young. I can't remember how old she was, but very, very young. She was a child at that time. But she used to protect her father and show him compassion. So Islam introduced the new ideology of treating women nicely and also giving them responsibility. When did he give women responsibility? When there were many raids that were occurring against Muslims, the Prophet, peace be upon him, took with him not only military men, but he also took with him many women that used to tend to the wounds. And they had many responsibilities. They were actually soldiers, you can say. And they saw all these new scenes, the blood gushing everywhere, wounds, and they used to treat them with the best care that they could provide. So that was an example of giving women roles in Islam, especially in the war, which may not be a likely place for women to be, but since Islam had few Muslims in numbers those days, he had to depend on the other gender. And he treated them all fairly. There is an instance in which, and I think I talked about this in the first night, there was a slave girl that was living in Mecca. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, was kind to everybody, including this slave girl. So, in many times, he would see that the slave girl will come and ask him for favors. So he would go with her, he would help her in whatever she needed. For example, if she needed to lift heavy wood for the fireplace, she would call him, he would go. Even though he was essentially one that is related to one of the greatest families in Mecca, Quraysh. Quraysh is actually a dynasty, it's not only a family. So he, in his high rank, used to go with the slave girl to the extent that she would come and actually not need to talk to him. She would just hold the tip of the rope, not his hand, but the rope, and just take him wherever she wants to go. She doesn't even need to tell him where I need to go. She has an errand, she just goes and takes him. He lived so humbly and so simply with everybody. And he actually has many narrations in which he talks about keeping women's rights and defending them and tending to them. The Prophet, peace be upon him, had special care towards the ladies that wanted to learn about Islam. In one case, one of the ladies came to him and said, "O Rasulullah, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, you as men go to jihad, you go to Islamic war, and you do great things. What about us?" So the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "If any one of you ladies actually goes back to her house and does her responsibilities towards her children, then she would have the same and the equal bounty in the eyes of God that will be given to any one of those men." He was in the great mosque, the mosque of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in which he is buried now. And there were many companions there. He said that in front of all of them. These women that came are equal to all of you. That's what he said at that day. There are some misconceptions about Islam, and I have mentioned a few yesterday and will mention some today also. And these actually are always regarding some legislation that Islam has provided that regards women, and they say that this legislation is unjust. I'll give an example. What about polygyny? Polygyny is the act of marrying more than one woman. Islam says it is halal to marry 4 women. So this is unjust. How? Because you as a man will have the hearts of all of your wives. But your wives will feel that there is somebody sharing you. So they will feel jealousy, they will feel hatred maybe, and many things else. So how do we reply to that? First of all, Islam is the first and only religion that said, if you cannot be just, then marry just one. So this actually tells people that you're not allowed to have concubines, you're not allowed to do adultery, you're not allowed to marry more than one woman if you will not be just. If you are just, then you can have 2 wives, 3 or 4. So this is point number 1. Point number 2, it is not compulsory to marry 2 or 3 or 4. You can marry 1, you can marry none, and you can marry 4. So it is a matter of choice, personal choice. And Islam does not go and, meddle with your personal choices. It gives you the freedom of choice. Number 3, you have to look clearly at what is happening in the world. Even the religions that say that you cannot marry 2, 3, 4, you can only marry 1, okay? They don't tell you that, you have to marry 1 and then you cannot marry others. Not in that formulation. But what they say is, actually they stay quiet. And they frown upon those who take 2 or 3 or 4 wives. For example, in Christianity, there are many sectors of Christianity that marry more than 1 woman. And when you go to the Bible, you see nothing that says you have to marry only 1 if you are unjust, or you have to marry only 1. It does not talk about polygyny or polygamy. Okay? After that point, you would see that the Christian society is split. There is no text that actually says any legislation regarding this point, but at the same time, marrying more than 1 wife is frowned upon. Even in those religions, for example, let's take Christianity as an example. In those religions, you would find that even if someone has a wife, he would have many mistresses, whether they be announced or unannounced, secret. So Islam realized that people actually would follow their instincts, whether they be legal or illegal. So what Islam did is, instead of making it an open issue, it started to regulate it actually. So before Islam, Arabs, they used to have hundreds of mistresses and hundreds of slaves in which they enjoyed sexually. So Islam limited the amount into 4 if you are going to marry. But it does not say it is compulsory to marry 2, 3 or 4. Neither does it say it is compulsory to even marry 1. If someone chooses not to marry, then he can just stop and not marry any woman at all and go on with his life. That is also okay. So Islam was very clear in the legislation that is talking about marrying and how you would go into wedlock. There is something else, another point I wanted to mention. Generally, in the general consensus, you'd find that the amount of ladies and, the female offspring that are born, and also the offspring that stay and do not die in a young age, are mostly women. This makes the population of the world predominantly women. And so, if we said that every man has to marry only 1 and 1 only, what will happen to the rest? Another point. We are in a Muslim country that was Muslim since the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. How many Muslims do you know personally that have married more than 1 woman? I know 2. 2 guys. Now I'm almost 30 years old and I know only 2 guys. Most of the guys, most of the people that are Muslim and are men, they prefer not to marry 2 or 3 or 4. They recognize that their own life is not compatible with such marriages. Marrying more than one woman is sometimes something cultural. Don't look at the Muslim countries. Look, for example, in the African countries. There are many African tribes that marry not only 4, but 10, 30, 50, and even 100. You can look it up in Google and you'll see that. So basically, those guys, they don't have any legislation that is stopping them. And they're not Muslim. Some of them are even pagans. They worship stones and whatever. And they still marry more than one wife. So it is not something that Islam created. Islam did not create polygamy and polygyny. It did not create them. Islam saw that people generally, not only in the Arabic culture, but in many cultures, do, in case of males, take upon the mission of attaining many female, wives. So it regulated it. It made it something that is not so open. It is controlled, it has ruled, and no man is to actually cause his wife or wives to get into distress. Whether it be by preventing them from getting their financial commitment that he has towards them, or emotional commitment, or whatever. Muslims are not allowed to treat women in an unjust way. It is haram. That is something I wanted to mention. There is something else regarding women, and it is sometimes considered a weakness in Islam. So we'll have to talk about it. Is it really a weakness or isn't it? This issue is the issue of being able to marry in a very young age. For example, the Prophet, peace be upon him, in some narrations, married Aisha before she even hit puberty. So about 9 or 8 years. So people may say, Islam is sexualizing children. How do we reply to that? The answer is very simple. We as Muslims are not afraid of getting confrontation or questions. To everything there is an answer. We just need to be asked in a proper way, a proper manner, and the answer will come following. So, the answer to that is that we as Muslims do not intend marriage for only intercourse. This is not the way that Islam looks to marriage. There are many benefits for marriage that exceed far more times the issue of intercourse. I'll give you an example. When you are married to a certain lady, there are certain jurisdictions that happen. One of them, for example, is that you are allowed to touch her skin. So, if you're not married to a certain woman, you're not allowed to touch her skin directly, and you're not allowed to look at her hair, nor her neck, and whatever. You know all of this. If you marry her, then you can do all that. When is that useful? Let's say that there is a woman that is in distress. She is in medical distress. Okay? And there is no lady doctor. There are only male doctors. And she does not want a male doctor, nor does the male doctor want to touch a female that is not married to him. Why? Because it is Islamically prohibited. Then what they could do is that they would make a marriage and a divorce directly after it, so that he could touch her hands, for example, he could look at the place of the wound or the place that he needs to treat without any issue in Islam. So for example, she'll have a surgery for 3 hours. They will initiate the vows between each other. I wed myself to you, blah, blah, blah. He said, I accept. That's it. They're husband and wife. Then he carries on with the surgery that he has to. He finishes, and then he divorces her at the same time. There is no need for a dowry, no need for anything else. She would forfeit the dowry because she wants to marry out of necessity, and that is one case. Another case, the case of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Why did he marry Aisha at such a young age? He married her because he wanted to gather Muslims from all parts and all families in Mecca. So he actually married one wife from each tribe, almost, to gather them. And that was a very successful thing that he has done. Some may ask, so is there any intercourse that happened when she was small and did not hit puberty? The answer is no. It is prohibited in Islam. If a child is wed, that intercourse happens until they hit puberty. So basically, Islam looks into the issue of marriage in a wider spectrum. Islam is not only for Arabs, it's for all civilizations. Some civilizations, they have a requirement to, for example, marry more than one woman. Even the ladies there, they would feel sometimes insecurity if their husband is married to one wife. She would require him to marry another because it is something of status, for example. Islam is for all times and for all places. It does not say, for example, marry many women or marry children or whatever, but it looks in a wide horizon and tries to make something that is compatible with all human beings. So if you go to the actual, life that is, and go to any Muslim country, you would find that most of the men marry only one wife until they die. And if she dies, they don't marry another. They are very loyal. Number two, 99.9% don't marry children. There are some countries that marry children, but for example, in Bahrain and other countries, it doesn't occur anymore. So, what I'm trying to say now is that Islamic, in its universal nature, tried to give women their rights, but not in terms of equality, but in terms of justice. Because, as I said yesterday, justice does not equal equality. And sometimes equality could be injustice. So, back to the issue of feminism and Islam again. Feminism is something that could be positive or negative. It is just a tool. If you use it correctly and wisely, then you would get great results. So Islam, when it looks to feminism, it looks to it the same way it looks to any tool. You can use that tool, but use it wisely. Use it to defend the rights of women. Use it to stand up to women. Use it to empower women. But if you want to use it to equalize men and women, then that is a big injustice. For example, let's take the Olympic Games. We have males and females. That is what we know. Suddenly, we have all these pronouns, and we have all these genders, and gender-fluid people, and non-binary people. So, what is happening now is that people who are biologically males are participating in the Olympic Games that are dedicated to women. Why? Because they are transgender. They have changed their genitals, they have used hormones, and they changed their features, their voice, whatever. So now they compete with ladies. The problem is that the male body is so different from the female body. Its bone density, its muscle mass, its low retention for water and low retention for fats. Many things. They have conducted studies actually, and that they saw any normal male, even a male that does not usually go to sporting events, would actually sprint faster than the fastest athletes that women have. And also in weightlifting, and also in running, cycling, whatever. This is why if you research now and look at transgender athletes, you'd see that in every single year they get the golden medal. And then women are stuck to the silver medal and also the bronze medal, if any medal at all. This is injustice towards women. We, as human beings, have separated the sports of men and women based on those biological differences that do not disappear if you call yourself a she and you're a he. You may change your name, you may change your gender, you may change your genitals, but you would never change that you have passed through male puberty. That is a big issue. Let's talk about something else that is, considered as a downfall of Islam when it comes to treating females and giving them their full rights. Let's see a question that came before. Yes. It says here, why do we prevent women from entering mosques if they have their menstrual cycles? Why? Are they not considered human beings? The answer to that is also very, very, very simple and is actually very objective and logical. See, when women have their menstrual cycle, they are correct, they are not allowed to go to mosques, but they also are not required to pray. So the 5 prayers in the day, she does not have to pray them. She rests. Another thing, she does not have to fast in Ramadan. She could eat whatever she likes, even in front of people. It's not haram. As long as her eating and drinking do not affect the general sacred month atmosphere. So, and also, there are many other jurisdictions that make life easier for women. Why do you only pinpoint that they're not allowed to enter mosques? And the answer to that is that also men are not allowed to enter mosques in certain cases. If a man performs intercourse with his lady, he is not allowed then to go directly to the mosque. He has to purify himself. He has to do ablution, ghusl. So it is not something that is specific to women, but it has benefits to women. What is it? A lady having her menstrual cycle gets very tired. She cannot stand for long periods of time. She cannot bow. She cannot do many things. So forcing her to have bed rest is something that Islam tried to do. If you say that women are, for example, not required to pray, but still you tell them that they could go to the mosque, they will go to the mosque because they want to compensate, right or not? So instead of her resting in her menstrual cycle, you will see her tiring herself and trying to pray, trying, for example, to read Quran and do several things in the mosque and stay late there to compensate her not being able to pray. So you will not reap the benefits of giving them rest. In order for women to rest, they are prohibited from entering the mosque until they finish their menstrual cycle, and then they could, by all means, even go and sleep in the mosque. Islam doesn't care. Islam cares only about giving women, the rest that they need, and not only the physical rest, the mental rest. If ladies, know that they are not allowed to pray because they have their menstrual cycle in order to rest, they will still feel, something in their conscience. They want to compensate. So what ends up happening is that they might go to the mosque. So we prevent them from going to the mosque. It is just like your job. Your job is something that you have to do. But if you're sick, they tell you you are forced to go home. Even if you can work, we want you to go back. Why? So that you could rest adequately and then quickly go back to work twice as much motivated. So ask when you are in doubt. Ask, why does Islam do this and that? Then if you receive an illogical question, search even more. If you cannot find a logical answer, then you have all the right in the world to say that Muslims are not right. But if you do not ask, if you have the question and doubt in your heart and then don't expose it, how could Islam and Muslims help you? Al-Hussein, peace be upon him, in Karbala, had practiced the utmost levels of protection towards ladies and women. Did you know that Al-Hussein, peace be upon him, when he came to Al-Akbar ibn Al-Hussein, his son, who was dying, he was dying on the floor of Karbala. When he heard the enemy saying that we have attacked your family and household, which were only ladies, he left his son and went back to them. This is how much Al-Hussein, peace be upon him, respected women and protected them. When many things have happened and ladies were coming out of the tents to see, he returned them because he feared for their faint hearts. Did you know that from the first day in Karbala, Al-Hussein, peace be upon him, went behind the tents and then tried to remove all the thorns and stones, because he knew that the enemies would attack the tents, and then the ladies would go and try to run from them and evade them from the back of the tent? Did you know that Al-Hussein got access to water once in Karbala? That was in the day he was killed, just less than an hour before he was killed. He went into the water with his horse to cool his horse down and for his horse to drink also. And he waited for his horse to drink before him. Look how he treats an animal. He makes his horse drink before him, and even though he is so thirsty, he waits until the horse is quenched and satiated. But when he wanted to drink some water, the enemies shouted again, "We have attacked your woman." So he left and he took off with his horse back, only to find out that they were lying. This is Al-Hussein, peace be upon him. He tried to protect Zainab and his caravan to the best of his abilities. But then, when Al-Hussein, peace be upon him, was killed, they went back and they burned the tents in which Zainab was, peace be upon her, the daughter of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the son-in-law of Al-Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Not only that, they even stole their veils that were covering their faces. They even stole their earrings from their ears until they were blooded. They even took their whips and started hitting children until many died. They attacked the tent, which is full of children and ladies only, with their cavalry. And so many of those children were killed. This was Al-Hussein, and these were his enemies. See how Islam came in that era and time to protect the weak. May God help us all to protect the weak and also keep reviving the memory of Imam al-Hussein in every year that is to come. ورحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة قبلها صلوات الله صلى